I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander. And today we'd like to speak to you about your body as teacher. In Metaphysical New Thought, we teach that there is a dynamic connection between mind, body, and spirit. And in today's environment, we all have stresses and difficulties with our bodies. And no matter who we are, no matter what our background, our education, no matter where we come from, we all have to deal with the realities of our physical bodies. And we want our bodies to be strong and dynamic and vital, and to have the energy that we all seek to have. And so in the next few minutes, we're going to be talking to you about the ways in which your body can be the teacher of your being, the teacher from a spiritual standpoint and a teacher from the standpoint of a physical daily living. We all have infirmities of the body from time to time, don't we, Iris?
Yes, we do. And some of the greatest teachers of our time have had physical problems. And so just because we have a physical problem does not denote that we're not exercising right living. And a lot of people get that idea. It would be nice if they didn't, because it would hold them back if they have that belief, because we need to know that, as you said, the body can be the most wonderful teacher of all.
Absolutely true. And one of the things that I think we all need to cultivate is this awareness of the fact that our body is speaking to us. And often our bodies speak to us in the form of pain, other times in the form of weariness. I guess one of the things that most everyone can identify with is our bodies feeling a sense of tension or stress. But what's going on in our minds and in our spiritual being is reflected in our physical body, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It always is. And we can look to see how we're reacting. And very often, when we have extreme pain, it's because we're fighting it and we're resisting, or we don't want people to know that we're having extreme pain because they'll think it's a weakness on our part. If we just treat it as part of life, and it is a part of life. But the more we resist and the more fearful we are, then the more intense the pain.
And as we fight the pain, it does get worse and worse, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And the other thing that happens, especially with pain and discomfort in the physical body, is we know that we live in our minds, and that our minds create the environment in which we live. And so as our minds build upon this consciousness of pain, then we become a part of the suffering, and rather than being one with the suffering, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go through the program, but one of the techniques that can be used is to really become a part of the pain and the discomfort, and to allow our bodies to flow with that. And of course, at the same time, we want to be able to deal with in a positive and affirmative way to eradicate pain if we can. But often pain can become a friend.
Yes, and I was reminded of once I had a very severe toothache, and I was resisting it and thinking, why me, Lord? And thinking all the negative things I could think of because it wasn't pleasant. But I then, we had a clock that chimed by the hour and maybe by the 15 minutes, but in any event, regularly. And this was some time ago. And so I started timing it, and the pain was really cyclical. And as I put my mind on the fact that it was cyclical and working in that way, that it became far less intense. So then I worked with that pain, and that's the only time I've ever done that, but unfortunately, I've not had that much pain in my life. But if we do work with it in that way, it really is not, it decreases immeasurably.
It does. Now, our bodies will tell us if we're hurting them, and that's one of the great mechanisms, and pain is a great awareness builder. So the body is teaching us when we have pain, and one of the examples can be if we exercise, or if we strain ourselves lifting something improperly, or if we work too hard. Maybe one of the things that I remember having aches and pains when I painted an apartment for someone, helped them paint, and that kind of movement over the lifting my arms up and brought me some significant pain. But that was really my body was telling me that I had pushed myself to the limits, or at least to a point, and that maybe it was time to stop. And so pain as a transient thing tells us when we're doing things that may be injuring or hurting our bodies.
Yes, and that's very helpful, and that's, I'm sure, part of God's plan, so we don't foolishly stick our finger in the light switch or something like small children might do if we don't watch out for them. But more than that, pain can help us with our physical knowledge of ourselves, but it also is a very great indicator in our spiritual life, and I don't mean pain, but our body can be a teacher for us in the way of spiritual endeavors, because it's just like when we meditate, we grow quiet, breathe deeply, because deep breathing is always a part of meditation, and then our body relaxes and it's more user friendly. So it's interesting if we just observe our bodies and thank our bodies.
That's a very important concept. And Myrtle Fillmore, the co-founders of Unity, which is a wonderful New Thought organization, Myrtle, at the turn of the century or before the turn of the century, when she was really stricken with tuberculosis and some other illnesses, came up with the concept and the idea of speaking words of encouragement to her body. And she decided, after some meditation and prayer, that she had become negative about her body. And she had, in her consciousness and her way of thinking was, oh, my body is sick, it's limiting me, it's causing me pain, it does this and it does that. So she had allowed her consciousness or her awareness to think negatively about her physical body. And what she was given in meditation was that she needed to affirm her body, and she needed to thank her body for showing her that she had problems that needed to be addressed, and also thanking her body for the positive things that it was able to do, even in light of the other things that maybe it wasn't able to do. And so she really began the process of praying or meditating and speaking words of encouragement to her body, especially those parts of her body that were infirmed or filled with disease. And one of the definitions or little twists that we put to that is disease is dis-ease.
Yes.
And so those parts of the body that are ill at ease, and we think of it as disease, but to speak words of encouragement, and that really had an affirmative and positive effect.
That's wonderful. And, you know, on a further note, as we talk to our body responds in just exactly that way. And if we can detach enough, then as we detach, we can see how our body is responding. Where if we're just in the body totally, then we're not seeing with our spiritual eye. So we should treat our bodies the way we treat our guests in our homes. And if we do, then our bodies serve us better. And the same goes for inanimate objects, like our automobiles. If we thank our automobile and pray before driving, it makes a big difference, I think.
Setting that consciousness or awareness puts in place a vibratory rate, and we talked a little bit about this on the program in the past, but the reality that mind creates vibration, and that vibration creates a response from everything that's around us, and that vibratory rate that we're sending out into and through our bodies is really affecting our physical being, our bodies, negatively or positively.
Yes. What would you think would be some of the ways we could tell our audience to use their bodies more efficiently, and to, besides thanking their bodies, or ways to thank the body?
Well, I think a way to thank the body is simply just in a meditation, or for people who aren't comfortable with meditation, just simply quieting ourselves and allowing ourselves to be aware from the top of our heads to the soles of our feet, or if you want to go the other way, from the soles of the feet to the top of the head, and just allow the body to relax. I think that's one thing that we could do. And as we allow the body to relax, think about those parts of the body and send healing and strength and relaxation to those areas. And if we start at the head, we simply move right down. And it's very easy to move through the systems of the body that we think about: our eyes and our ears and our brain and our mouth and so forth. The other thing that I think we could do that's very practical, and you do it in your work and I do, and all New Thought people do to some extent, and especially those involved in meditation, is breathing. And that deep breathing allows us to create a centering presence within our being. It also has a wonderful mechanism of releasing the negative and increasing the positive as we breathe in and breathe out.
Makes us more aware of our bodies and more aware of how our bodies are functioning. And I know some of my friends would think I was odd when I would say I have to take my body for a walk. Or I take my body for a walk every day, or 5 days a week, or however many. But that's true. If we detach from our bodies and not be so much in the body, then we are more impersonal, and then we treat our bodies with more courtesy. And I think that's a really important part, to honor our bodies. That's just like we honor our minds.
And to honor our bodies, just as you said, with activity.
Yes.
And I think that's a big problem. I think we don't breathe enough, and we
Yeah.
don't exercise enough. And so many of us think that exercise means going to the gym and lifting weights and doing things, which may be wonderful, but some of us can't do it, and it's not that practical. But we certainly need to move our bodies. And the inertia, the lack of simply movement of the physical body has a negative impact upon us.
Yes, and we can stretch. As for exercising the body, we can do stretching exercises every morning when we first get up. Even if we're going to walk or do other more strenuous exercise, just to stretch our bodies really well. Or we could start when we're still in bed and just stretch the body. And that makes a big difference in how we feel and how we greet the morning. And also our mental attitude of greeting God with delight and joy instead of just with gloom. Then there's so many ways we can really look at ourselves and see what it is we need to do differently, and then do it.
I was speaking with a lady recently who just had a very variety of illnesses, and in the course of the conversation that she and I had, she mentioned I suggested that she begin with deep breathing. I suggested that she begin with some movement like walking, because she really, to my way of thinking, needed some exercise. And the other thing that I felt was that if she would move, get up and walk, do some things, that it would also stimulate her way of thinking, her mind. And one of the things that I suggested was also walking, just simply taking walks or walking around her apartment, and deep breathing. And she said, well, you know, I really tried that, but when I try to take a deep breath, I just can't even breathe. Well, there's an indication of her body telling her something very dramatic. And what her body was telling her was that she was so tense, and that she had so much resistance within her that she simply wasn't even able to take a deep breath. Now, of course, there are clinical reasons why we can't take a deep breath that we'd be really concerned about, pneumonia and cardiopulmonary diseases and so forth. And so we're not, if anyone has horrible difficulty breathing, we're suggesting that they see a doctor. But if in a situation where we just can't take a very deep breath, and in this lady's case, it had nothing to do with any infirmity. It had to do with the fact that she was just so stressed and so tense. And we started doing some simple breathing exercises. And as she was able to breathe more deeply, and as she was able then to begin to take, I wouldn't call them deep breaths, but medium deep breaths, she was able to say she felt differently. Well, of course she did, because she was getting a significant amount of oxygen into her body, and she was beginning to break up that tension.
That's so important. And you were helping her see the need that she had. And sometimes we don't see that need, but when we do just a little bit, then we can see how much more wonderful it is. One of my most precious friends is 80 years old, and she is so active and alert, you'd never think of her age. And she does seem ageless, and she certainly seems a lot younger than that. But for years, she's been walking every day since she retired. She's been walking every day, and she does deep breathing and stretching, and it shows in her body. And I know many people who are elderly in years, but very youthful in their appearance. And if our audience would just take stock of themselves, they might see how each would see what they can do to make their life more viable, to make their life more interesting and exciting. Because if we don't have that deep breathing, the energy that is engendered through that deep breathing, then we lose interest in life.
And if we're detached from our bodies and we feel alien to them, or feel that they are alien and feel that they are an impediment to us, then our lives change dramatically. We'd like to pause at this point in the program and offer you an opportunity to receive some literature so that you can continue the ideas and concepts that we're sharing with you and study them in your home.
We would like to give you the opportunity to explore and discover in your own home the new thought teachings that this program is sharing with you by sending you a free copy of one of these booklets. Simply address your request to Confident Living at P.O. Box 7726, Long Beach, California, 90807. Whatever your dream, whatever your vision, you can reach it through confident living.
Well, before the break, we were talking about ways in which we could be sensitive to our bodies communicating with us. And I think, as we shared, many people think of the body or think of their body as something that's bringing them pain and suffering, as opposed to it being an integral part of who and what they are. From a spiritual standpoint, we know that there is this mind, body, spirit connection. And we know, too, that the body is described in Scripture as the temple. And so if, in fact, it is the temple, then it houses something pretty magnificent and wonderful, doesn't it? And if it is, in fact, the temple, we think of temples as houses of worship, or the place that houses the presence of God or the presence of the divine, then we certainly would want to maintain that temple in the most positive and affirmative way, wouldn't we?
Yes, and sometimes people need affirmations or mantras or something to remind them, and they might just say to themselves that God gave us the message, "Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and the Spirit of God dwelleth within you." And it lifts the spirit when we do that. If we do it spontaneously, anything we do spontaneously, then it gives an energy. So it gives the body an energy. Just like before taking a drink of water, it's interesting just to see the effect. If you say something like, "May I be attuned to thee, O God, as my spirit was with thee before the world was," or something like that. It wouldn't matter. It's the spontaneity we put into it. Or to bless the water and just to hold it and ask God's blessing and then drink it and see the difference, because it makes a difference. Just like communion, wine, or juice changes the taste. The blessing changes the taste. And so it would be interesting for people to try those experiments and see what happens. Just like blessing the food we know changes the energy of that food.
Mhm. And as we bless the food, which is something we were all taught as children,
Yes.
most of us, many of us, and we get away from that. And that doesn't have to be a grandiose thing
No.
of doing something that's going to either humiliate us or call attention to us. I know a lot of people are bothered by that. It can be something that is done very silently
Yes.
and is internal for us. But those aspects of sanctifying and consecrating the things that we do and take into our bodies really has an effect of empowering us and doing wonderful and good things to our bodies.
It does. And proof of that on a very physical level is the placebo that the allopathic doctors give. And they'll give some as placebo and some the drug. And those who had the placebo will often react even better than those who had the drug. So there's proof. Exactly, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the fact that our bodies respond, and that our bodies respond to a large extent based upon what our minds are communicating,
Yes.
because our mind is communicating to our body. And of course, we all know from the standpoint of healing that the mind is able to bring about the manifestation of healing together with divine presence, and in many cases together with science. But we bring those things together. But the dynamic of our human mind and the creative force of our mind, if we unite our mind and our body with our spiritual body, then we fortify all three of those, and the body begins to teach us and tell us what it is we need to learn from each of the experiences that we have. And sometimes diseases are those kinds of experiences. Sometimes just aches and pains are those experiences. Sometimes depression is the experience that brings us the lesson we need. Or other times it's just being weary. And of course, sometimes our bodies just tell us it's time to rest. And that's one of the magnificent things about getting tired, isn't it?
Yes, because if we respond to our body, then we're much farther along. And sometimes when we feel really sleepy and we need to take a little nap, it's good to take that little nap. And it can just be very brief. And we know that many of the greatest scientists and greatest thinkers of the world have been nap takers. They take little naps throughout the day and evening.
Yeah, it's interesting in New Thought, an observation that I've made over the years. And of course, one of the things that we do in this program is we're not trying to get anyone to change their church or their religion or their faith tradition. But one of the observations that have made about New Thought and metaphysical organizations is that they have, especially the individuals who practice the teaching and who live the teaching, the ideas and concepts that we're sharing with our viewers and that we teach at the center in our church. Many of those people live long and very vibrantly healthy lives, don't they?
Yes, yes, and that's really exciting to see. I was thinking of what my little godson said to a waitress. She said something about that I was his mother, and he said, "Oh, she's not my mother, she's my godmother." And before she left the table, he told her my age, and which was past 70. And so she sort of chuckled, and he turned to me the moment the moment she left the table, and said to me, "That's what my mother always does with her friends. The moment your back is turned," because he wanted to. And Carol did it because her friends are surprised that I'm the age I am. Well, Benjamin did it because his mother said it, but I thought that was very precious. But it's true that we do seem more youthful when we live the laws and live the life the best we can. You know, we're hearing so much today about anti-aging means, anti-aging this and that, and ever so many things. Well, I think part of that, it's working. And part of it's working because people, as you teach, we live in our minds and not in the world. If they think it's going to work, it'll work. If they put their faith and confidence in it, it'll work, even if it wouldn't work otherwise. But so many things, we do have so many means now of helping us look more useful and more attractive and more viable. And so it's good to look into those things and see what we need. I have a friend whose mother-in-law just visited her, and the mother-in-law was just dragging when she arrived there. She was at my friend's home for a month. And so they decided she needed glucosamine and chondroitin sulfate. Well, everyone I know is taking glucosamine and chondroitin sulfate, and rightly so, and so am I. So, because we all think, well, we hear these rave reviews, so it probably works. Well, within 2 weeks, that lady was feeling like a new person and she gave all the credit to the chondroitin and glucosamine sulfate. Well, I'm sure that part of it was because she was visiting her family. They loved her, they wanted her there, and they were nurturing her. So the love they gave her really went a long way toward making her seem more youthful and more vibrant. So we want to remember that too. As we're helping people, then as we send them love, it creates an energy in their body that is anti-aging.
Absolutely. And as we send love to ourselves.
Right.
And of course, one of the problems that we know sociologists and psychologists tell us is this issue of self-esteem and the lack thereof that so many people have. And the anger and all of the negative feelings that we feel, that people feel so often toward themselves. And so this importance of loving ourselves and loving our body and loving those around us really has magnificent and dynamic healing power.
Yes, and we can see that in families where the children are loved. Then you can see it in their faces and in their body movements and their demeanor. And those who are not loved, you can see it, unfortunately, it shows in a very sad way. But it shows in families too, where couples, one will be hard, hateful toward the other, and it shows then in both the persons. So we can control our environment, we control our lives, and we can control what happens to us, and not accept anything less than the good and the right and the lovely.
And as we're loving, as we're positive, as we're affirmative, as we're joyful, all of those things not only enrich our minds and our body, but they enrich our spiritual being and they enrich our total well-being, don't they?
Yes, and then it reflects in our bodies in a very viable way. And I think it must be awfully hard to be deeply spiritually oriented. I know many people have been, when our bodies are not comfortable. And I learned that when I first became a hospice volunteer, which I did for 10 years. And I could see how the people were just those who were totally immersed in their bodies in a negative way didn't have any quality to their life. But those who reached out to their family and accepted the love. And some people reject love. They won't allow people to nurture them. Well, we should let everyone nurture us all they want to nurture us, because we need all the nurturing we can get. And as you said, from ourselves as well.
And as we do that, then the healing process begins. We have probably just a few minutes left, and we probably should touch a little bit on people who do have chronic and ongoing pain. And the fact that that is, in many cases, a very draining situation. You mentioned people in hospice, end of life, who have difficulties with chronic and ongoing pain. But we also have people with arthritis and with other kinds of ailments that cause continuous pain. There is a way to become friends with our pain, isn't there?
Yes, there is. And could you tell people what you think would be most expedient? Just a little, like 1, 2, 3.
Well, I think the first thing in dealing with pain is to not get into an issue of denial over the reality that you're where you are. And that what we need to do, though, in our mind is to understand that while we may have pain or discomfort, that pain or discomfort doesn't have to rule our lives. And so what we can do is to begin to examine that pain and the feeling. And one of the things that people do, and I can think of a young lady who had a horrible, difficult disease with a lot of pain, who began to work through the process of yoga. And she had said that at the times that she would be in the most pain, she would connect with her pain, and then she would sit and breathe deeply and enter a meditative state and allow the pain to take her where it needed to take her, which is an interesting concept, because as I've talked to people, and you have as well in our ministry and counseling work, we see many people end of life and in other situations in severe pain, and this struggle with pain when there's the fight. And it was very interesting to me, and she has a very, very serious disease with a lot of pain, how she said, the pain is completely different now, that when I'm really in terrible pain, I quiet myself, I center myself, and I let the pain take me where I need to go. And the pain then takes her on a journey. And that journey is one when we take the mind, the body, and the spirit, and especially the physical body, and we meld it with the spirit and with the mind. And the pain takes us through a process where we need to be. And it's hard to say to anybody, well, you're right where you need to be when you're suffering, but we're always where we need to be. And wherever we are, that's where we need to be in order to understand and realize the things that need to be brought to us. And so that deep breathing, I think, being one with the pain, going with the pain, and looking at the pain not as an enemy, but as another aspect of life, and trying to think differently about it.
That was a wonderful synopsis you gave. And when I mentioned the toothache I had, and I experimented, I hadn't had the teaching that you just gave, and so first was the deep breathing, and then the relaxation, and then going with the pain, and just saying, and I tried saying God and I are one, and just knowing that I am one with God, and it made a big difference. And what was excruciating pain then became like a game, and a lot of people would resent saying, well, pain, you make a game of pain, but that's what it was to me at that time. And the toothache still was there, but I flowed with the aches, I flowed with it, and so the information you just gave is invaluable to those who hear us, who are experiencing pain, or who are with people who experience pain, because then they can teach it to them. And it's so simple.
It is simple, and yet it is a challenge for us to be able to deal with the realities of embracing our body as a teacher and understanding and realizing that it has lessons for us. We hope that the information that we've shared with you has been useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.